Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Good Vibes Podcast. This is your host, Ruben Luna, and today it's actually episode number 1. So I'm pretty excited. Okay, I've been thinking about doing this podcast for at least four years, and I've been procrastinating. Not that I didn't want to, is because I finally have the space needed to be able to actually execute. And here we are with episode number 1. The Good Vibes Podcast, el podcast de las buenas vibras, right? And here's the thing. One of the things that I've been thinking about is the name. So I've been considering different names, like what's gonna be the good name that is gonna resonate with who I am as your host. You know, I've been brainstorming with different team members, and finally I came out with the Good Vibes, the Good Vibes. And the reason of the good vibes is because, you know, if you're giving out good energy, guess what's gonna happen? Good things are gonna happen. Good things are gonna happen to you. And if you're giving bad energy, then bad things are gonna happen. It's just like everything else, right? So that's why I came up with that name. So for those that don't know me, I'm in real estate. I've been doing real estate for 19 years now. Sometimes I have shown properties, right, where I get like really weird vibes. And not just that, even the people who are coming with me, my clients, they actually feel the same way. And we look at each other like, hey, did you just kind of feel kind of weird here? And and the opposite, right? When sometimes I have shown properties, I'm like, man, like this house has such a nice vibe, and you just can feel it, right? And same thing with people. Not just houses, right? With people that you can feel their vibe, they're good people, that you gravitate to them. And then there's some people that they just their vibe are a little bit negative, and it's funny how I'm able to feel that from a mile away, and you want to stay away from people who are negative. With that being said, today I want to talk to you about my story, right? Because we're gonna have this podcast is gonna be based on people, people who are in real estate business, people who are not in real estate business. I'm going to have tons of guests. We're going to have a lot of fun with this podcast. And that's what it's all about. Good vibes is about having a good time, healthy, good time. And that's what I'm pushing for. So today I want to talk to you about my story so you know who I am and where I've come from and why I do what I do. I was born in Mexico. So as you can tell, my accent is a little bit thick, and that's okay. I have improve over the years, and Spanish was my first language, and then I learned English once we moved to Phoenix. But growing up, so I was born in Sonora, Mexico. From Sonora, when I was growing up, when I was just a baby, we moved to Chihuahua, which is another state in Mexico, and then from Chihuahua we moved to Juarez, which is a border town from El Paso, Texas. And we lived in Mexico till I was 14 years old. So as soon as we got a chance to be able to come and move, we did. I was about 14 years old. So I started high school, 9th grade, with no English whatsoever. So that was kind of nerve-wracking. The good thing about myself and how I approach life, trust me, I get nervous when I'm in front of people. I get nervous when I'm recording, right? It's kind of normal, but it kind of goes away as I continue to just talk. And in high school, not knowing any English, I always have been good at making friends. So I make friends real easy, real fast. As soon as I started my very first day in high school, that helped me translate most of the classes. Like luckily, I have somebody that I was friends with that were bilingual in every class, and they were helping me throughout my high school years, translating in most classes, because half the things the teacher was telling me I couldn't even understand. So that was kind of nerve-wracking throughout my high school. Now check this out. This is funny. So I will come home right after high school. I will have homework, and at that point, like, there's no help, right? You go home, you have your homework, and now you gotta do your homework so you can turn it in the following day. So every time that I had homework, I would go to my Spanish dictionary to figure out what every word meant. And doing homework was kind of rough, because it would take me 4 or 5 times longer than it would take anybody else to do their homework. It was funny, and at the same time, it put me on the spot that I needed to learn faster, right? That's why, when I was 14 throughout my high school, it kind of pushed me to learn just because I didn't have help the entire time, just besides during class hours. So here's one thing about me. I never been afraid of asking for a job, right? I don't like to ask for favors. Like those that know me, it's very rare that you hear from me asking you for a favor. Like if you're gonna help me, more than likely I'm gonna pay you because I don't expect things for free. And that's how I've been my entire life. And growing up in Mexico, man, since I was like 9 years old, like I knew money wasn't around, even though we lived a good life in Mexico. Don't get me wrong. I will have friends and hang out with my friends all the time throughout my elementary school. But I know money was a big factor in my household. Like for those that have been raised in Mexico, and if you don't have a great job, then it's you just live paycheck by paycheck, and not even that. Sometimes you just your budget is pretty tight. And growing up, I'm like, you know what? I need to do something about this, right? So I used to go and because I like to spend my own money however I want. I want to create my own money. I like to create my own future, right? So when I was like 8, 9 years old, I used to go to my neighbors' houses, and I would ask them if they needed any kind of favor. I would ask them, "Hey, do you want me to wash your car? Do you want me to bring some groceries?" Like, in Mexico le decimos que si quieren que le hagamos un mandado. Growing up in Mexico, it's very common that every morning people goes to the tortilleria where they make fresh tortillas. Every single morning they will go and get tortillas freshly made. So I will go to my neighbors and I will ask them if they want me to go and get them tortillas, and they can just tip me whatever they need, whatever they wanted. Like it wasn't a fee. Like sometimes I was, I use the reverse psychology. I would say, "Hey, you want me to get you tortillas? I'll bring them to you," because it was a walk to go get them from where we lived. And you can just tip me whatever you want. And if you don't have any money, that's okay. Next time you can tip me. So, neighbors for the most part they'll say yes, and they'll give me nice tips. So that's how I was able to create my own money. Growing up. And then once I was a little bit older, when we moved to Juarez, I had a job as well. I don't know if you guys seen those kids that are packing your foods at the grocery stores. They call them cerillos. Well, in Juarez, they call them cerillos. And you just by the cash register packing people's food, and then people will tip you. So I did that for quite some time, and once again, I was making good money. I mean, growing up in Mexico, I had my own money growing up, so I didn't have to ask my mom or anybody else to buy me anything because I was able to, have my own jobs and make my own money. And I just every time that I would get a job at any place, I will, I will hook up my brother to get a job himself at the same place, and then I will hook up my cousin growing up to work at the same place. So I was like, we'll get in, and then I will like bring him over, so we all benefit from it. So that was my years growing up in Mexico. So now living in Phoenix, right, starting high school, when I was 15 years old, one of the advices that I got from my stepdad, and this is the one that is stuck with me till now, right? So he says, the best way you can help me is by you getting a job. Like literally, I was 15 years old and barely moved to Phoenix. Keep in mind, I'm still struggling learning the language. And then one time he came out, we were just having a discussion at home, and he says, you know what, the best thing that you can do is to get yourself a job. Trust me, I worked all my life. So the advice, I don't think he meant it in a bad way, but I took it like very to heart. And I've been doing that I've been doing that ever since, even before I met my stepdad during my teenage years. And sure enough, that was like something that lit a fire under my butt and got going. So I was able to find a job fairly quick. When I was, I think you have to be 15 years old and 6, 7 months, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if that has changed. But yeah, I was able to get a job, and, I was going to high school in the morning and then going to work in the evening. And I did that throughout my entire high school, from freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, like throughout my years. I will go to school in the morning and work in the evening, go to school in the morning, work in the evening. Now, here's the thing. The reason that I graduated from high school with very little English, it was because I will show up every single day. Like, I think my junior year, I had perfect attendance. Like, missing a day was like impossible. Like, I will not miss a day because I don't like catch. I don't like to play catch up. Like, that's the last thing that I want to do. I want to make sure that I'm always being proactive, right? So I want to get things done before they obviously before they're coming my way, or just being ready. That's my mentality that I have growing up or my entire life. Even though I wouldn't do very well testing, I will do all my homework, so I will pass. I will pass my classes, and that's why I was able to graduate high school without failing any years. So that was kind of amazing. But then I started working, and when I would get a job, my 15, 16 years old, I was 15, 16 years old. I would start, always, I would have a job. And then at the same time, I will look for something better. Like, hey, if I find another job that I get a better pay, I'm going to move. And sure enough, I will find another job. I will give my 2 week notice, move to a better job. And I did that for quite some time until I met my wife. Well, I did that throughout my teenage years. And then when I was about 17, Corina and I met, which is obviously, as you know, my wife. We met when we were 17. We started dating when we were about 17 and a half. We dated for a couple of years. When we were 20 years old, we got pregnant with our daughter Elizabeth, that she is now 19 years old, okay? Elizabeth was born when we were 20. By then, before Karina's pregnancy, we knew that we had to move out, right? From our parents' house, because, just being, having a baby and, living under somebody else's roof, it's kind of, you don't have your space, right? And that's what we needed. I told Karina, I'm like, I always had a job. I always, figured things out, and I told her, I'm like, we gotta get our own apartment. I didn't want to be a burden. We didn't want to be a burden. So about before Elizabeth was born, about 20 years old, almost 21, we moved out, got our own apartment, and we moved in there for the first year. And then during the first year, we applied for a loan to be able to buy a house. So luckily, I was working full time. Once again, I was going to school, and we were able to qualify for a loan to purchase our house. And that was our experience of actually going through the process of owning our first house. So during the process, it was a very tough market. I mean, we've gone through tough markets. That was a tough market back in 2000, and I think it was 03, 04, if I'm not mistaken. That was even before I got licensed. So during the process, GPS wasn't a thing. And a realtor would get lost almost every single time because she didn't know how to read directions from the MLS planos, right? So I will tell my realtor, I'm like, hey, give me the properties that we're going to see, and you follow me because I'm good with directions. I know how to read them and get to the streets and be able to get to the property. So she will follow me almost every single time during the process of our home buying process. And as a matter of fact, we ended up finding our own house. And we ended up going with a whole different realtor, which is, we made our first realtor work so much, but at some point I think she got tired. Not that she found us a house. We submitted multiple offers and we just got outbid almost every single time. We submitted about 5 to 6 offers before we even got our offer accepted. So I told Karina, I'm like, hey, maybe, we gotta do something different because nothing's happening, right? Like, we're not getting any offers accepted. Our realtor is not always available. And I feel like we're missing opportunities. So we end up going to this house with a whole different realtor. Love the house. We're like, all right, this is it. Let's put an offer. And at that point, it just blew my mind about timing, right? Sometimes we do a lot of things and we get discouraged and we get exhausted and we just don't want to keep doing it. But this is where you got to keep on digging because you never know when you're going to find the gold. And that was the gold that the other realtor missed out on because she was already kind of giving up on us because we were it's not that we were picky buyers. It was a tough market, and I think she was getting a little bit frustrated because we couldn't get any offer accepted because as a first time home buyer we needed seller concessions, we needed some assistance from the sellers to be able to purchase a house. And luckily, with the property that we found, we submitted the offer, got accepted, and we purchased our first house when we were about 21 years old. So that was our story about buying our first house. Okay, so check this out. It's gonna get even better. So when we purchased our first house, I was working from 5 in the morning to 2 p.m. That was my full-time schedule at my job. And then in the evening, I would go to Glendale Community College. I had no idea what I wanted to be. Karina was a staying-home mom. I mean, Elizabeth was just a baby, so we didn't want to leave her anywhere during her, first couple of years. And at one time, I was driving to work, and I remember this because I was going to work, and I'm like, man, like I gotta figure something out. It's not just work, right? So I gotta figure something out. So on my way to my work, I was talking to my mom, and she's like, "Hey, I think you should get into real estate." And that was the moment that a light bulb went off. Literally, on my way to work, I did a detour to a real estate school. Going to work, I signed up for real estate classes, and I started the following week. I went pay for my classes, and I started my real estate classes right after. Now, between a full-time job, between going to Glendale Community College, and going to real estate at the same time, it took me about 6 months to finish my courses. It took me a while. Once again, for those that have taken the real estate exam, for some of you, it come pretty easy. For some of us, it's actually pretty hard. Like it was hard for me. Not just, I mean, by then I already knew the language. I knew, most of it, but not necessarily like wording. There's a lot of words that will like mess up with my answers, right? Because I finished my courses finally during the real estate class, school. Then I started testing. So during my test process, there was a lot of questions that will mess up my answers, and I will have to go back home and study the wording to make sure that I understand the question, because some questions are very, very tricky. So it took me a while before I was able to pass my exam. But once I passed my exam, I was like extremely happy. Like this, like I felt like I won the lottery, even though, for those that are in real estate, that's like the bare minimum. Just passing your school exam. I was celebrating already. I was like, I thought I was in heaven at that point when I passed my exam, just because I went through a pretty hard time, just testing. So I got my exam. I passed my school exam. Then you have to take the state and the national, I think it was. Now it's one test. I keep in mind, this was about 19 years ago. So I start testing, and every time you test to take your state and national, you pay every single time. So if you fail, you have to pay every time you failed to be able to retest every single time. So I retested a few times. I think it took me 6 times. I'm not going to lie. 6 times to be able to pass. I mean, I have team members that they have passed their exam the very first time. And I'm like, man, that either got easier or you're super smart. More than likely, they're super smart. But I passed my exams. And Karina and I had a discussion after after I passed. I'm like, hey, so I think I'm gonna have to do this full time, because there's no way I can concentrate in real estate and be able to have a full-time job and be able to keep up with everything, right? So we saved up enough to cover our budget for 4 months. And this is our conversation. Like, hey, if I don't make it in 4 months, once again, Karina was still a staying-home mom. Elizabeth was about 2 years old, give and take. And we had that discussion. We're gonna budget for 4 months, and if I don't make it in 4 months, I'm gonna go back to my job where I left in good terms, and then I'm going back to school and kind of figure things out, right? So sure enough, I gave my notice. My manager starts laughing, and he says, like, all right, I'll see you in a couple of months. I'm like, all right, if I don't make it, you'll see me in a couple of months because that was my plan B, right? If I don't make it in 4 months, I'm gonna come back. I started all by myself. Luckily, I still remember this transaction coordinator. Her name I still remember her name, Heather. And Heather will help me with every single question that I have. Keep in mind, I'm very proactive. Like, can you explain to me what's buyer's inspection notice and seller response? Like the BINSER, right? There's some of the forms that we use here in real estate. She's like, oh, yeah. And then I will come to her house. Like, let me go to your house and I want to like sit in front of you and you explain to me what it's for because I want to know what I'm doing, right? I'm not just going to start doing random things and more when I'm representing somebody with the process of buying or selling a house. That's a huge thing. So that's how I was able to learn the process, just by asking a tons of questions. Like I said, back in the day, Heather helped me a lot. And that's how I was able to learn through the process. And I got licensed back in 2005. So during that time, the market was booming, right? The market was booming. I was going all in. I got my first check 3 months into the business. Like I was stressing out because our savings went down because we already had our first house, our first child. We're at that point barely 21 years old, and we were able to make it once I got my first check, and then from that point moving forward, I never looked back. Now, let me rewind a little bit just to kind of explain why I decided to do the business of real estate. Is because when my mom told me like, hey, go and sign up, I remember that I did most of the job for my realtor that ended up not representing us. I'm like I can do this 100 times more. Better. So that was like the one thing that helped me go for it, right? So I'm like, hey, I can do this, and from that moment, I started the school. Then got my license, got my first check 3 months into the business. So long story short, I'm not gonna keep you for too long. That was the process of me getting licensed in real estate. Once again, I've been doing this for 19 years now. We've gone through the ups and downs. Obviously, that's how the market is sometimes. But we like to stay very, very proactive. Like even last year in 2023, our team produced better than any other year, and that was for a lot of realtors. That was a pretty. This podcast, it was something that I've been wanting to do, just because a lot of people might resonate with this, and if you do, feel free to share with your friends and family and subscribe. We want to make sure that we are touching as many people as we can during our podcast. And I want to make sure that we can, be in front of those that might need a little bit of help. Think that you don't have what it takes, and in reality, we all do. We all have what it takes. We just gotta be, we just think outside the box and go for it. There's a question that I always ask myself every time that I encounter a situation that I feel a little bit nervous or uncomfortable, and that question is, what's the worst that can happen? What's the worst that can happen if somebody says no? Like, move on, big deal, right? So this podcast is going to be drive to that question. What's the worst that can happen? So welcome to the Good Vibes Podcast. This was episode number 1. Look forward to many, many episodes, and make sure to subscribe and share if you like this podcast and you want to see more. Thank you so much, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.